Hello, welcome to Virtual Empower. My name is Brian Cafferelli. I'm on the product marketing team here at QuickBase, and I'm here to talk to you about powering QuickBase performance. So this is going to be a quick hit video. It's going to be about 10 minutes, as opposed to some of our other content this year, which is about building skills. This one is really just more informational. We know that a lot of you out there are really interested in technology, and so this is really just giving you kind of a bit of a peek behind the curtain to give you a bit of an idea of what we actually focus on to keep QuickBase running faster and faster over time. All right, let's get started. So first I want to set some context. So last month, we served about 1.6 billion requests on the QuickBase platform. And a request is just any individual action that you take as a user. So it could be adding a record, it could be viewing a report, or it could be an action that takes place automatically, like a scheduled pipeline or an API call being made or something like that. So there's a lot of traffic on the QuickBase platform. There's a lot for us to manage at once. And on average, we see that an action you take in QuickBase, we respond within a small fraction of a second. You can see it's about a fifth of a second on average. And taking that a step further, 90% of requests complete within about a quarter of a second. So it's super fast, but it's really not fast enough for us. It can never be fast enough, right? We can always get better. So I want to talk to you a bit about our shared responsibility model for making QuickBase even faster. So those models are really about you optimizing your app on the one hand, and about us optimizing the QuickBase platform on the other hand. Now, there are other sessions at Virtual Empower this year that are going to help give you the tools that you need to figure out how to optimize your apps. This session is going to focus on optimizing the QuickBase platform. But they're really kind of similar processes when you think about it. So when you are optimizing your app, you're following best practices for app building, you're periodically reviewing your application, you're looking at the structure, you're figuring out, is this app being used in the way that I had anticipated? Based on the feedback I'm getting from users, are there changes that I want to make so that I can streamline and improve things and get things to run even faster? You know, that awesome summary field that I created last month that's really complex and is crunching a lot of numbers, is that still useful? Or has business changed, and is that something that I should go ahead and remove? Now, of course, we support you in optimizing your app in many different ways. So we have our online documentation and training through avenues like QuickBase University, as well as our community forum. And then we have some live engagements, such as with our customer care team, as well as our customer success teams. Now, on the other hand, QuickBase, the company, we are always looking for opportunities to make QuickBase faster. And you get the benefits from these really automatically. So when we update the platform, any performance improvements that we release are just kind of silently released, and they'll benefit your applications right away. Now, when we are looking for areas of opportunity where we can make QuickBase faster, we're going through a lot of the same logic that you do when you look at your apps. So we're looking at, what are the complex pieces of the QuickBase platform? Where are areas where we believe that we can make an impact, we can really speed things up? But then we also have that second bullet point there. We want to think of this contextually. If there were a feature that we saw, oh wow, we think we can make this run 10 times faster, this particular action. But if that action is not taken very often, then it's not a very good use of our time. So we really use the data that we have about how you use QuickBase, and that informs our platform engineering team so that we can make the biggest impact. Now, of course, that work is supported by our very talented QuickBase platform engineers. Okay, so here's our agenda. There are three main areas where we've made an improvement since the last Empower conference in speeding up QuickBase. The first is with database writes. The second is with large user operations. And finally, with custom modify operations. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, don't worry, that's a lot of kind of internal QuickBase speak, and I'll explain each piece as we go along here. So first, I'd like to talk about how we've sped up database writes. So what is a database write? Well, the QuickBase platform relies on a custom in-memory database engine. And that database engine is really optimized for speed and for complexity. And having data that lives in memory is very valuable because memory is extremely fast. So imagine that at the beginning of the day, you're the first person to load QuickBase, you've got all of the data, it's sitting there on hard disk, and you begin your work. You start adding new records, modifying existing records, things like that. As the day goes on, those changes that you make are actually saved in memory. So if I come by later on in the day and I run a report on a table that you've already added records on earlier that day, then what QuickBase does is it takes the data on disk, it takes the data in memory, and then it combines the two of them to make sure that you're looking at the most recent version of that data. But QuickBase has to be very smart and very dynamic about this because the changes that are saved in memory, it's sort of like a buffer or like a ledger. And the more active your application is, the longer that ledger gets. QuickBase has to figure out, okay, there are two things that I could do. Someone's trying to load a report. Should I look at the data on hard disk, look at the data in memory, and then merge the two and send it to you? Or would that take too long? Would it be faster for me to just take a pause, take all the memory, all the data that's in memory, and write it to disk and move it over there, and then send you the combined data set that way? So we're always kind of running those calculations. So when I talk about a database write, that's the action of moving data from memory onto hard disk. Now, there are a lot of actions that can trigger these database writes. They happen silently, they happen automatically. It's always been kind of a normal part of the way that the QuickBase platform operates. But it's basically triggered by changes you make to your record data or changes you make to your application schema. But there are certain types of actions that are more likely to trigger a database write, which is really just whatever actions add the most to this memory buffer. One type of action that we looked at over the past year that was causing a lot of these writes is importing data, particularly importing large sets of data. And we saw that there was an opportunity for us to make an improvement there. Okay, so what happened? So we know that we have an in-memory database in QuickBase, and it writes to disk routinely throughout the day. We were able to really speed up that process. And the application, one application we were looking at was this really big and complex app. It was running these large imports pretty frequently. And our logs showed that on average, those imports took about 40 seconds. Now this is importing thousands of records. But we saw that after we made the improvement, they finished on average in 5 seconds, the imports from this one particular app did. So if you work in a large, complex QuickBase application, it likely got faster, maybe without you even realizing it, sometime over the past year by this improvement we made to database writes. On the other hand, if you work with some smaller QuickBase applications and you haven't had those issues of imports before, it really benefits you as well because this adds more scalability and more headroom for you. So this should build your confidence that as your business grows, as you need to track more and more data in QuickBase, our technology is going to be able to scale with you and continue to be super fast. Okay, so what else have we been up to in making QuickBase faster? Well, we've also sped up large user operations. Now, we see a lot of big, successful QuickBase apps out there that are shared with a lot of people, lots of different teams collaborating together. Some of them have thousands of users in them, even tens of thousands of users in them. So large user operations are basically just any time we have to scan through the user list for an application in order to do something, right? So if you're an admin, you're going into the manage users page, that's an obvious example where we'd have to go get a current list of all the users in the application. But there are a lot of other places where this applies as well. You know, if you are filling out a record that involves a user field and you're searching for someone's name, or maybe you're running a report that's filtered on the current user or filtered on a particular user. Those are all what I would classify as large user operations. Excuse me. So we found that we were able to improve this. We got these operations to speed up quite a bit. And because of that, if you manage an application that has a lot of users in it, again, it may have gotten faster. You would have seen it get faster. sometime since the last conference. And also, again, if you're using a smaller QuickBase application, this is just another reason why, to believe that we have the scalability that you're going to need in the future. And as you add more and more users to your application, we're going to be able to scale it that appropriately. Lastly, we've sped up custom modify operations. So a custom modify operation is any action that you take in one of your apps where we have to check a custom rule. Now, the custom rule is part of rules and permissions. So, if you want to control which records users can edit, sometimes there's a need to have complex business logic in there. Sometimes it's sufficient to say, only allow my sales reps to edit opportunities where they're the user listed in the assigned to fields. But sometimes it needs to be more complex than that. So for instance, maybe you're only allowed to view a task if it either hasn't been completed or it has been completed, but it was marked complete within the past 7 days. So folks get really creative about this. They really fit them to their own unique business processes. So we found a great opportunity here to speed these operations up. And again, it doesn't just involve things like when someone is editing a record, right? So imagine you're on a form, you're filling out a record, you're making an update, and then you hit save. When we hit save, we need to make sure, are you still allowed to edit that record? It could be that between the time you clicked on the pencil and hit save, a change could have been made to the application. We want to make sure that we're always honoring those rules and permissions and those data controls that you're setting up. But the impact of this, again, is really broad. And this goes back to how we think about making the platform faster. We are not just speeding up a single action, we're speeding up a whole category of actions. And these custom modify operations, they come up more frequently than you might think. If you look at my screenshot here, you can see I'm looking at a report. And if you look closely, and I've circled some of the pencils here, this person is allowed to edit some of these records, but they're not allowed to edit the other records. So even if they use a QuickBase app, let's say they're in there 5 or 10 times over the course of the day. They run a few reports, they probably go through the dashboard. If they navigate to the app from the My Apps page, they never edit any record. Yet every time we load a report, QuickBase needs to scan through for every one of those records. And if they have a custom rule set up, actually run that logic and figure out, is it appropriate to show the pencil there or not? Because of course, we don't want to show an option to the user that they won't actually have the ability to execute. So again, we're able to speed those up. So if you have an application that makes heavy use of custom modify rules, then your app would have gotten faster. Otherwise, if you do use this feature in the future, just have that confidence that we are continuously investing in making sure QuickBase is just as fast as it can be, and that it's optimized to help you address some of the really gnarly priority business challenges that you're facing. So to recap quickly, over the past year, we've made a lot of improvements to make the QuickBase platform faster. The 3 that we focused on are speeding up database writes, speeding up large user operations, and finally, speeding up custom modify operations. Thanks so much for watching.